Like, I got into the Book of Enoch recently, which is a book, an ancient religious book that was at one point in time included in the canon that was like the Bible and everything like that, but then they decided it was too crazy and they removed it from the Bible. But there's no debate about whether or not it was actually a religious text that coincided with the Bible, and it appears in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It is the craziest shit. It's the craziest shit. And I'm getting AI I go, tell me what the nuttiest stuff. So I ran it through.
What did it say?
It's insanity. It's first of all, it's God's coming down and mating with women and creating this race called the Nephilim who destroy. Here, I'll ask it again so we can. Not now. What was my? It doesn't like keep a log of what you talked about. Tell me the craziest shit in the Book of Enoch. That's all you have to do. And then bam. Like, look, it just starts spitting it out to you and tells you. The Watchers and the Nephilim. The Watchers descended to earth on Mount Hermon. They take human wives, teaching humanity forbidden knowledge, sorcery, astrology, metalworking, weapons, cosmetics, and enchantments. Enchantments. This is like older than the New Testament, older than the Old Testament. Their giant children, the Nephilim, are described as monstrous beings who devour humans, animals, and even each other when food runs out. That sounds like us.
That's what I'm saying. That sounds present.
That sounds like us,
except
and
not,
we
again,
are
not the physical warfare,
right?
But the inhabitation of a digital god, an alien, whatever that is, or the monsters that come down. Well, that does sound like a nice little mirror to us.
If we were engineered by aliens, you think of aliens, they're these little tiny guys with no muscles. We would look like giant, monstrous beings.
Yeah.
And if you think about what we do, we devour everything.
Yes.
We devour the earth itself. We devour each other when food runs out. We definitely do that. Yeah. Like, this is one of the craziest things I've ever read in my life. And this is like a legitimate ancient text. Yeah.
Yeah.
It goes way deeper than that. It's about the astronomical calendar. It's like there's a lot of nutty stuff in this book. But the point is, AI was like helping me through it. I was asking AI, okay, can you read me? Now, it read me a synopsis of what it says. Can you read me the actual quotes? And like, what are they trying to say here? Like, what is the interpretation of what this is trying to mean? What is like the rational sort of explanation for why they're talking about like lakes of fire and like what is happening
and
here?
It gives you an interpretation.
Yeah, I'm reading where I'm listening to the Book of Enoch right now.
Okay. Yeah, that's some wild shit too. Yeah.
It's so wild. 'Cause you're going, what are you saying? Like, gods, the Watchers, came down and mated with women of Earth and created
Nephilim or whatever.
Yeah, the Nephilim. Like, what are you saying? Like, what were you trying to say? Thousands of years ago when they wrote this down.
Yep.
And the version I think that we're getting this from is from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is from Qumran. So how long did they write it down before that? Like, how long did they discuss this? How long ago did this happen? And what are you saying? Like, what were they trying to record?
Yeah.
Why does it match up with what they're saying in Egypt? The gods walking amongst us?
Right. Yeah. It goes to some wild places.
Squirrely.
I know.
It gets so squirrely, and that's where you get into the alien camp.
Wesley
the Book
Huff.
of Enoch is nuts.
That's
I talked
the
to myself
Giants
about
one.
it.
That's the Giants
It's
one,
not
right?
just the Giants. It's aliens. It's about the Watchers who came down and mated with human beings. Bro, I'm reading it right now.
I know you are. I already know.
Bananas. She told me to read it, and she's like, you have to read this. It's nuts.
And what did Wes Huff say? Did he say there's a legitimacy?
It's 100% a legitimate text. It's legitimate religious text, but they decided not to include it because it's so nuts and because it goes against like what the writings of the Torah.
Right.
So, but it was a few rabbis. Just a few rabbis decided.
That nixed
like
it.
if the Book of Enoch was included in the Bible, it changes the whole
Why would the
story of the
rabbis
human
decide
race.
what goes into
back
the
then
Christian?
They had that kind of power. They just decided that it doesn't get included in the canon. This is a long time ago.
But yeah, I mean, this is like around Well, who decided the canonized Bible, right? This is like Constantine time, right?
Well, that's for the New Testament, right? And so with the Old Testament, you've got Westhoff would be the guy to ask all these questions.
Enoch was included in the Old Testament.
Oh, it's old as fuck.
Oh, okay, got it.
Not only is it old as fuck, when they found it, they also found a version of the Book of Isaiah. This is one of the things that Westhoff told me that was really fascinating. They found a version of the Book of Isaiah that is verbatim the same as a version of Isaiah that was 1,000 years later, which they thought was the original.
Unbelievable.
That's what's crazy. For 1,000 years, they maintained the exact same story verbatim, writing it down and passing it on. And the Book of Enoch's in there with that. And the Book of Enoch is bananas.
Yeah, I think we might need to do a little deep dive on the Book of Enoch.
The Book of Enoch, it says that these watchers came down and mated with human beings and created a race of giants called the Nephilim who consumed and destroyed everything in front of them. Gee, that sounds like people. That sounds a lot like people. If you got a bunch of little chimps and then you got these tall aliens and they make a fucking 7-foot man, you know, a Viking who's like chopping off heads and lighting villages on fire and has this unstoppable desire for conquest, that's humans. Well, the Nephilim sounds like humans.
Like, exactly. So they're not giants. We are the giants. And then what if the other folks...
They might have been giants. Like, it's hard to say.
But what if the other folks were the Neanderthals? Well, because there was a time where we're living together, right?
Right. Well, they were here before us, allegedly. Well, the question is, like, where did humans come from? This is the real question. There's a really interesting show on PBS right now called Human, where this lady goes on this journey of, it's like, she's, what is her degree in? Is she an anthropologist? I believe she's an anthropologist. But or maybe some sort of biologist, but she goes over the history of the human species. It's very interesting. The migration from across the Bering Land Bridge into North America, when the oldest people started coming here, how they came here. Fascinating stuff. But that's one of those things, like, if you think ancient history is filled with horseshit, like ancient human history, like of the humans. That's the woman's name. I don't want to fuck up her name. Ella al-Shamahi. And it's on BBC and PBS. Really good show. I just started watching it. She's a paleontologist. Degree in genetics and taxonomy and biodiversity. But they just found recently a human skull that pushes the date of humans back another 500,000 years.
Yeah.
So it's like all they know is what they find in the fossil record, and there's so little fossil record. And then they keep finding new things. Like they just found Denisovans in like 2010. They're like, whoa,
what is that?
What's this? Total new branch of the human tree.
It's called
Denisovans. Yeah,
Okay.
they found like a bunch of teeth, I think, in Asia, and they're like, what the fuck is this? And then or maybe it was Russia. So there's that. There's the one that they found in China, the big head people.
That's the one that I
real recent. That's real recent. I forget what that one's called. We've done this a million times, but I always forget. But so they're always finding these new versions of humans. So how many of them really were there? But if there's a bunch of science experiments, if aliens are coming down and like, let's try them where they're short and really powerful and they only eat meat. And that's Neanderthals. Like, stop. This one's not a good design. This is not a good design. We need them a little more frail so they invent things. Because the brutes don't invent anything.
Yeah, more frontal cortex.
Yeah, the Neanderthals had bigger brains than us. That's what's interesting.
So then what part of our brain was specifically different?
See, we have a very our idea of them is that they were dumb and they couldn't talk and that they were brutes. But it doesn't seem like that's true. In fact, it seems like they had art, they definitely had tools, and they had language. And they might have been as smart as us. They were just different. And maybe us being a little weaker is what made us smarter. You know?
Or made us work collectively.
Maybe we're a little more alien, just a touch.
Right.
There's a little too much salt in that stew. Let's add a touch more of us. And, you know, it seems like the hairy, 5'7", 200-pound fucking savages with big eyes that might be able to see at night, because it looks like they might have had night vision. They have huge eyeballs, man.
Right.
The Neanderthal eye socket's way bigger than ours. Their skull's thicker. Their bones are more dense. They might have had night vision, like a dog. You know how dogs, their eyes glow when the headlights hit them? They might have had that same ability.
I mean, yeah, I don't know why
that design's too sketchy.
It's just not
They
working.
can see at night,
Yeah.
and then they go hunting other people. This is too much.
But then we hunted them.
Maybe we might have just fucked them.
I also heard we fucked them.
Well,
Yeah,
we
you had that
hunted them and
joke,
we
right?
fucked
You're
them.
like, I got a little bit of yeah.
One more time with the monkey.
But in terms of like the stories, like, all right, you know when a comic gets off stage and like they think they killed but they bombed,
Right.
like there could be people telling those stories in the books.
There could be.
Like meaning what their rendition of what happened
Yes.
is in the book, and that is what they truly believed happened. They might not even be delusional. They are
Right.
delusional, but like that's what they saw, and that's
Right.
what happened to them.
And history is always written by the winners.
Exactly.
Yeah. My version of the Bible story back in the day, I used to have this bit about Noah's Ark. I was like, the problem with the Bible is people are full of shit, and that story sucks.
Yeah.
Like, it's that simple. It's
Yeah.
like people lie all the time. I've never met any politician or any person who's in charge of anything that's like really important that I would say never lies. So if you're back then where there's zero accountability, zero video, zero anything, they can't even write.
Well, that's where the cross-referencing makes sense, right? It's like that's when you got a bunch of different people saying the same thing or similar things. You start to go, okay, maybe this did happen.
So when you say the book of Isaiah is intact, how similar is it to the book of Isaiah that's in the Bible?
So that one is fascinating. So this isn't true for all of the Dead Sea Scrolls, but when we discovered the Great Isaiah Scroll, previous to that, the earliest copy of Isaiah that we had was in the Masoretic text, which is in the Middle Ages.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it was literally 1,000 years. We literally pushed back our understanding of Isaiah 1,000 years. And the thing that really shocked scholars, like I said, this isn't true for all of the Dead Sea Scrolls, but one of the things that shocked them about Isaiah was that it was word for word identical to the Masoretic text.
Word for word.
Word for word.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that
So this
it
is the
right
Great
there?
Isaiah Scroll. So if you go to Israel and
Wait,
you go...
is that papyrus?
Yes. No, I think that one is vellum.
What is vellum?
So I should be more specific. So parchment is animal skin. Vellum can be used synonymously with the term parchment. Technically, parchment is like baby animal skin, like calves or lambs. But this is the Great Isaiah Scroll, and you can see like they stitch together the parchment because it's so long.
God, it's so beautiful. The way they wrote back then was so beautiful. I mean, maybe it's because I can't read it that it's so fat. Maybe if I saw English, I would think that's beautiful too.
Yeah.
Especially script, like if cursive is very beautiful. But that is so fascinating because obviously coming from a point of ignorance, the letters look so similar. Like so many of this is the what I always got about cuneiform. When I look at that, I'm like, it's just one particular sort of character that's this way and that way and up and down and
Cuneiform is wild.
Weird.
It's really, really tricky. And that's the thing when, like, if you're studying ancient languages and you start to study Greek, like the Greek alphabet is similar enough that you're like, okay, alpha looks like an A, right? Delta looks like a D. So you can figure it out. And so it tricks you because you start off and you're like, oh, this is phobios, fear. I know what a phobia is. And you get this false sense of encouragement. And then, the further you go down the rabbit hole, you're like, oh, I'm screwed. So, but Hebrew is completely the opposite because the writing system is so different. The learning curve is hard at the beginning. And then you're like, everything is just 3 letters with a suffix added to it. And so it feels like, whereas the opposite is true with Greek. Greek, you're like, I get this. And then when you really go down the rabbit hole, you're like, oh, crap. None of the things that I learned about that are supposed to be standard, all of them have exceptions.
Wow.
But cuneiform's a wild one.
Do you know who Rick Strassman is?
No.
He's a scholar, and he did a lot of early work, FDA-approved work on psychedelics. And he spent 16 years teaching himself to read ancient Hebrew.
Nice.
Yeah, so because he wanted to really understand the Bible from the original source of ancient Hebrew and to understand it in context. Because ancient Hebrew, the way the words are structured, is so different than English, and that something must be lost in translation. So he spent 16 years teaching himself how to read ancient Hebrew. I was like, that is that is such dedication. 16 years.
It's a long time. That seems too long.
Well, you're self-taught. I mean, he's doing it himself.
Yeah. Self-teaching Yeah. I self-taught myself Greek at first, and then when I started learning it formally, I realized how much you miss when you self-teach yourself.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, how many people can teach you ancient Hebrew? How many courses are available?
Oh, you can take it at any graduate college.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And is it, it's not something that we know what it sounded like, correct?
Yeah, I mean, this is the big debate with ancient languages.
Right.
Like, same thing with, arguably, we don't know how any of this was pronounced.
Right.
I mean, modern Greek speakers get really mad at me when I say that because they're like, of course we know how it's pronounced. It's pronounced like we pronounce it, right? And on all my videos where I'm like site translating Greek manuscripts, there's so many comments of modern Greek speakers getting mad at how I'm pronouncing things. But realistically, we don't really know how most of the things are pronounced with anything.
But isn't that very bizarre when you're translating? Like if you go back to, like, say, the Epic of Gilgamesh, we don't even know what the words sounded like.
Yeah.
We kind of know what they represent, and then we do a literal translation of what they represent. But if you've never heard, no one can speak ancient Sumerian.
Yeah. Well, Sumerian's a wild one because it's a language isolate.
What does that mean?
So Hebrew is an Afro-Semitic language. So Hebrew is related to all of these other languages like Aramaic and Akkadian, but language isolates have no adjacent comparisons.
Whoa.
So, because I tried to teach myself Sumerian and I failed and I just gave up because I couldn't do it because I had nothing to really compare it to.
Right.
So Sumeriologists are very they're a field of their own because I learned a little bit of Akkadian because I had studied Semitic languages, and there's enough crossover between things like Hebrew and Aramaic and Akkadian, but Sumerian, you have nothing to compare it to. And
what did it eventually become?
It just died.
It just died.
It just died.
How? Do we know?
I mean, the Sumerians lost to the Assyrians, and the Assyrians got taken over by the Babylonians. I mean, it's just the course of history where things happen. But there are a number of ancient languages that are language isolates, like Linear Elamite. We had no idea what Linear Elamite even said until 2021.
Oh, well, I never even heard it until 5 seconds ago.
I know. There you go. Jamie, if you pull up, if you look up, what's it called? There's a cup, a silver cup. It'll come up if you Google image Linear Elamite, because you think cuneiform looks wild. Linear Elamite is completely different than that too. And there's a silver cup, which we had no idea what it said. And then a bunch of researchers, ancient Near Eastern researchers, developed. Well, so let's, in the corner there, that one on...
Far left corner?
Oh, no, here. Now it's moved because he clicked it. That one. Yeah, click that. So that's Linear Elamite.
Whoa.
And so that's in and around the same time that languages like Sumerian. So there's this very interesting kind of, if we're talking about a story in the Bible like the Tower of Babel, where it says that God confused their languages and everybody started speaking different languages, you have these languages that just pop up and out of nowhere and have no relation to one another. So Akkadian starts to adopt certain words in Sumerian, but they're still Sumerian words. It's like pizza is Italian, right? Or like kayak is Inuit. But when you're looking at the words that carry over, it's not because there's a relationship between Akkadian and Sumerian. It's because you have these cultures that live side by side, and eventually Akkadian starts to adopt these things. But Sumerian is... So that's why when I see people like Billy Carson talk about being able to read Sumerian, I'm like, dude, I read ancient languages and I can't. I've tried and I can't make heads or tails of Sumerian.
Yeah,
so
that's a tell.
Unfortunately, it kind of gives away.
Listen, I like Billy. He was a nice guy. I really enjoyed talking to him. I really do. I think his videos are fun. But I also think truth is important.
I have no problem with him as an individual.
He just needs to course correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, course correct and recognize what you know and what you don't know. And that you're not doing people a service, especially people like myself that aren't educated in this. Like we turn to others who claim to have a vast knowledge of this to help me out. Tell me what's going on. When I sit down and talk to you, tell me what's going on. And if you don't really know, you're fucking over a lot of people, unfortunately, for yourself.
Yeah.
This how do you say it again? Linear Elamite. Can you put that back up again, Jamie? So this was in 20. Can you show me that image that you'd showed me before?
Actually, see if you can find the cup.
That's pretty dope, right?
If you scroll, there should be a cup. I think it's called the dashed.
Is that it in the lower corner?
No,
That's not the cup.
No, if you go, it's got. Yeah, if you look up cup, that guy. So see that inscription at the top beside the face.
Yeah.
So that's the one. So it goes around the top of the cup, and they cracked that.
Look at that dude's honker.
He's got a big nose, isn't it?
That's a hell of a nose.
Yeah, he can smell that linear Elamite. And so actually, interestingly enough, if you pull back, Jamie, that's my so there's an infographic that I made that just popped up. So if you click that guy,
there?
that's the one I made. Why is it coming up like that?
Someone else reposted it.
Oh, okay.
So is it just bad resolution? Is that what you're saying? Oh, there it is.
Oh, no, this is mine.
That's
so
yours. Okay.
so actually, here, I'll be self-serving. If you go to wesleyhuff.com.
That is so, can we just look at that for a second? That is so cool. And how old is this?
20th century BC.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 4,000 plus years ago.
Yeah. So if you go, Jamie, to wesleyhuff.com and then click my infographics tab at the top. So I started making these things for the graduate students I was teaching. And so if you go down, there should be an archaeology section. And in the archaeology section, I have that one on, I'm blanking on what it's called. I make ones for manuscripts too.
What a great website you've got.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate
This is
that.
awesome. It's so detailed.
Yeah, so there's a linear Elamite one.
What a fucking phenomenal resource this is.
Right there.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, Marv Dash. That's what it's called. So yeah, you see this. So I have Sumerian, linear Elamite, Akkadian, and Paleo-Hebrew there at the bottom, the comparisons. And these are languages that operated like alongside one another, but are almost completely foreign to one another. So there is crossover between Akkadian and Paleo-Hebrew.
So that's interesting. Sumerian, when I'm thinking of cuneiform, I'm not thinking of that, right? That looks different than some of like the clay scrolls, where they've, the imprintations that they make with a clay wheel.
Yeah, well, it's all done with the stylus. So it's like a little wedge stylus. So there are different variations of it, but ultimately it's done with the stylus. The thing that's interesting, like you're probably thinking more of what that later Akkadian looks like, right? Where it's like the wedges.
Yeah.
So Akkadian basically borrowed the writing system. And it had development over time, but is very close.
So when they conquered them, did they have their own writing system initially and just incorporated Sumerian writing to theirs?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one. But
God, I'd like to know.
I know, right?
I mean, it's so long ago, but not,
Yeah.
I mean, it's so long ago in terms of a human life.
Yeah.
But it's not that long when you think, like, we went from 4,000 years ago to that to large language models.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, quantum computing.
Yeah. Well, even if you look at language systems develop. Paleo-Hebrew turns into what we saw in the Dead Sea Scrolls, whereas Paleo-Hebrew is a little bit different than what we eventually see in the Dead Sea Scrolls because there's like a development within the language. And then modern Hebrew adopts the Hebrew in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
I had Rep Luna on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And she was the one who really got me to read the Book of Enoch.
Dude, she's digging in.
Oh, yeah.
She's digging in. Yeah.
She's all in on the UFOs.
I know she is.
I don't know what they tell her.
Yeah.
Is she useful to them? The whole
maybe,
thing is
though.
weird.
Maybe. It's hard to know.
But when I started reading it, now, if that was included in the Bible, if they had, because it really was rabbis that decided that it didn't jive with the Torah, right?
Right.
And so they said, no, this one's
Can't
too
have
crazy.
this, yeah.
If that was in the Bible, and that's what we were taught,
Things would be different.
can you imagine like Sunday church, the Watchers came down and made it.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, that is in the same area of Qumran, written down as the Book of Isaiah. So all these things that are included in the Bible, that's there. It's all in the same word. Why are we ignoring some of it? Like, that's really crazy. Why ignoring the stuff that seems the most kooky?
I think that there's probably maybe disagreements because I mean, there's so much change for the biblical canon from all of these different councils, like the Council of Nicaea, all these different censorings and changing of the Bible. It's probably personal issue. It could be something as simple as just someone who personally did not believe that. It's like, that's bullshit. Remove that. That's not real. There's no way there were giants. But I love how at the beginning of the Bible, it's like there were giants in those times and the times before.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All over.
Moving on, never mention it again, in any sort of real context other than David and Goliath in a few situations. But no, I really am starting to wonder if there was a giant race that was on this planet, there was. Dude. I really do.
The Native American depictions alone.
Yeah.
There's too many stories of enormous men that they had to kill.
Yeah. Yeah. And their history, their oral tradition goes so far back.
Yeah, I mean, imagine we're talking 10,000. Yeah. Now that we know that human beings lived in North America 22,000 plus years ago, right? So the fossilized footprints that they found in New Mexico, so that's 22,000 years. So imagine if 22,000 years ago these things were a real thing. How many of them have you found? Mm-hmm. You haven't found any bones of humans from 22,000 years ago in North America, have you? No, right? So why?
Exactly.
Does the Smithsonian have them, these motherfuckers? If they really do have a giant down there, can you imagine?
I think they probably do, Joe.
Can you imagine if there's there's a tomb that you have to go into? It's like a vault. The guy cranks open the vault.
It's like the history version of Area 51.
You see a fucking head the size of this table, and you're like, what?
That's what we're dealing with. What we're dealing with, yeah.
Yeah, and we had to kill him off.
Maybe.
Which totally makes sense. Why would you let that motherfucker live?
Right.
You got a 10-foot tall, 12-foot tall.
That's a problem.
Yeah, 2,000-pound human that eats people.
That is a problem. I wonder, I always get this because, the Watchers themselves are never described as giant beings.
Right.
I wonder where the giant came into the equation.
Well, isn't it
genetically.
Us compared to them?
Maybe, because maybe there were slight aliens, like alien greys or something, and,
Well, look at the description of the Nephilim, how they destroyed everything.
Yeah.
Like, they created this thing that consumed everything, destroyed everything, including mankind. Like, what does that sound like?
It sounds like us.
That sounds like us.
It sounds like us.
Right. And also, you're saying mankind. Like, mankind, what are you saying? Are you saying aliens? Are you saying, who wrote this?
Yeah.
What is mankind?
For sure.
What does that term mean? I bet you're not saying man. I bet you're probably using an ancient language to describe whatever the dominant force was at the time that's writing all this down. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
What is these Watchers? They mated with humans? So what are they? And they created something that destroyed everything? What? So, okay, what is that? What are you talking about? And doesn't that sound exactly like humans? Like, what do? We fucking destroy everything.
Yeah.
We destroy everything. We light things on fire. We suck all the fish out of the ocean. We throw our garbage in it. We are so destructive.
Yeah.
And we're so consuming. We consume. We're one of the only animals that dies because we eat too much.
Yeah. Right.
Right? We're one of the only animals.
Yeah. Well, we're one of the we are the only example on this planet of the level of intelligence that we have. I mean, it's just phenomenal. Right. I mean, really quite phenomenal when you consider all of the various avenues of evolution that have been given the opportunity.
We have a massive leap.
Phenomenally, but a leap that has to in some way have been intervened with, in my opinion. I mean, it's such a quantum leap in our ability of cognition and the brain size. I mean, I do find the stoned ape theory very interesting and the concept of using psychedelics, and I think there's a role to play in that for sure. But I just think that when you have such a novel trajectory change from every other creature, every other animal on this planet, that tells me that there is something fundamentally accelerated in humans. And whether that can just be put down to shamanic use of psychedelics, I don't know. I think that when you invoke, again, all of these various theologic stories, it becomes clear that something was interfacing with us. And perhaps at one point, we were interfacing with them. And there was a communication and a relation that has since long degraded after, cataclysmic outreaches and.
I think the evolution that came out of psychedelics and primitive man was the escape from the barbaric nature of our roots.
Right.
I don't think it's necessarily the development of the human brain. I think it's probably
communal
a way to
societal.
Use the human brain with its primate background, but soften the ego.
Right. Yeah.
And endorse a feeling of community. And promote a feeling of community and love and the connectiveness that you get from psychedelics. So it will allow you to traverse the timelines between incredibly barbaric hunter-gatherers with stone-tipped tools to agrarian societies where people are all living together and cooperating, and it makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is the giant leap to being a human in the first place.
No.
It's kooky.
It is,
and it's in the Bible. At least it's in the Book of Enoch.
It's
that's
there.
The crazy part about it is that they literally describe what we're, and not just us. Like many people have theorized, like, have we been a product? Are we a product of genetic manipulation? Are we a product of accelerated evolution?
Well, again, my own experiences, I just feel like there is quite obviously a vast intelligence spectrum out there, in my opinion, and I think it goes beyond our own perception of space and time, and I think that there are likely things that can come in from realms that we just don't really believe are real, like the astral, and even the realm of the imagination is an interesting thing. What is this place inside of our heads that we can instantaneously create anything we want, and all things, including everything on this table, once came from inside someone's mind? Like, we are excretors of ideas into reality. We kind of render reality into something that nothing else does.
And I'm sure you're aware of like the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch, which was one of the original biblical texts that wasn't included in the canon, but just because of a few rabbis decided it didn't jive with the Torah. And they found the Book of Enoch along with the Book of Isaiah as a part of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And when you find out that there was a biblical text that was contemporary to books that did make it into the Old Testament, and that they talk about the Watchers who come from above and mate with humans and create this race of giants called the Nephilim who destroy everything and consume everything. And you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is this? And just stop and imagine if those rabbis hadn't if that hadn't been excluded. Like, Wesley Huff is great talking about this stuff. He's a real historian when it comes to really understanding the history of these biblical texts, and he's absolutely fascinated by it. And he's like, yeah, it's kind of crazy that they just decided to not put that in the Bible. Imagine if they did. And part of when you're going to church and they're going over the Old Testament, like, okay, this week we're going to go over the Book of Enoch, and we're going to figure out who the Watchers are. Like, what is that? Like, what is that story? The crazy thing that Wes Huff told me was that the Book of Isaiah that they found in the Dead Sea Scroll predates the oldest version of the Book of Isaiah by more than 1,000 years.
Whoa.
When they found it, they found out that there was a Book of Isaiah that is 1,000 years older than the one they thought was the oldest one, and it is verbatim. It's verbatim from the one that's 1,000 years later.
Wow.
Which is kind of crazy.
Wow.
But then it's also in the same fucking caves as the Book of Enoch. It's all together there in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Amazing. I mean, we've been fed this story that sort of all of these religions and myths from the past are all just false.
Right.
They're all just hallucinations.
Right.
They're all just lies.
I don't believe that.
It's just really it's really arrogant, actually. Like, it's like, well, no, now, like, we've been around for, humans have been around for like millions of years, but the last 150 years is like we really figured it all out, and we figured out that all human knowledge before whatever, some recent time period is nonsense. Yeah, I think that's quite arrogant.
It's very arrogant, but I'm a believer that history is far older than we think it is. And I think the more time goes on, the more that gets revealed. So when you're talking about something that's 4,000 or 5,000 years old, I think really you're talking about a retelling of a far older story. And I think it's very difficult when you're dealing with people that don't have an understanding of science. The written language is fairly new. It's an oral tradition for generations before it's ever written down. So my question with all of this is always like, what were they trying to talk about? What were they trying to say? What was the original experience that someone documented in story? And then that story was relayed over and over and over again, generation after generation, until it's eventually written down, and then they study it and take it literally. And then also translating it from Aramaic, which is the Dead Sea Scrolls, ancient Hebrew, all these different languages, to Latin and Greek and eventually English. Like, But what's the original story? Like, what are they trying to document? What is this important knowledge that they want to share? And how screwed up would that get over the generations and generations of talking about it? But what ultimate truth is in there? Like, I'm absolutely fascinated by the story of Jesus Christ. Because if you wanted to come up with a way that people would live that would absolutely be far more beneficial than just going on natural instincts and tribal behavior, and you would follow Jesus' teachings. Like, I can't find a flaw in the way he tells you to live life. There's a lot of religions that involve, torturing non-believers and raping infidels and being able to do terrible things to the people that don't believe your religion. There's none of that in Christianity. It's all forgiveness. It's all treating your brother and your neighbor as if they're you. Like, it's a beautiful way to live life.
Are you Christian?
Well, I go to church, and I have been for quite a while.
Okay, so
I've been doing it for the last 3 or 4 years.
But that's not really an answer to the question.
Well, because I don't know. I think it's very interesting, and I do believe that if you follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, you will live a better life. I really do believe that. And one of the things I talk about is, like, the people that I go to church with are the most fucking polite people I've ever met in my life. They're so kind and so nice, and everybody lets you out of the parking lot. Everybody's like, you go, you go. It's like like, it works. You know what I'm saying? Like, if people are trying to find an idea, does that mean I believe people came back from the dead? Does that mean I believe Moses parted the Red Sea? Not really. No, it seems like that's most likely a story where people are telling it generation after generation after generation, but there's probably something happening. There's probably some truth to it. Then when you take into account some of the stories from the Old Testament, like the Book of Ezekiel, which I'm absolutely fascinated by. The Book of Ezekiel and his account of the wheel within a wheel and the fire flashing forth continually, and in the midst of the fire, as it were, gleaming metal. Like, what the hell is that? Like, what is that? Like, what are these stories? And in the midst of this gleaming metal, there's the likeness of 4 living creatures. Like, okay, they darted to and fro like the appearance of a flash of lightning. Okay, what is that? Like, what were they trying to say? And what was the original experience that people documented that was so important?
And it might have been a lot more similar to these UFO experiences.
That's the point.
We've been seeing. Yeah.
And I think this is one of the things that Tucker goes back to.
The Christian story is so beautiful and so important. You know, Rene Girard's view of Christianity as really stopping the cycle of scapegoating. Scapegoating where, and I'm seeing it right now as part of the reason we've been pushing back against the moral panic on Epstein, is that you scapegoat the thing. Traditionally it literally was a goat, but you scapegoat the person or whatever.
Wait a minute, originally it was a goat?
It really was a goat, yeah. It was a goat, yeah.
Yeah. Really?
It would carry the sins of the community.
Oh, you sacrifice the goat?
I think you would send it away to die or something.
Oh.
But over time it became
that's what
people.
A scapegoat was?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then
it's always a goat.
But generally
goats are the devil, goats are everything.
Oh,
goats get a bad rap.
Goats are in your lobby, aren't they? Or those are elk. No, in your
those
lobby.
Are elk.
Okay.
No, there's a big difference.
Yeah, but I mean, so Christianity puts an end to that. It says stop scapegoating. I mean, they scapegoated Jesus, really. I mean, you kind of go, you scapegoat, the purpose of the scapegoating was for the community, to unite the community and scapegoat to put all of its sins on one thing and then kill it or get rid of it. And that was the way the community would restore unity. Christianity said, no, we're not going to do it that way. That's immoral. And so, he without sin should be the first to cast a stone. Jesus wasn't saying that prostitution was good or anything. He was saying that we should not be scapegoating, you've got sins too, so don't scapegoat this person. That's a really radical moment in human history, and it really is what allowed humans to spread. It creates a universal, Christianity is the first universal, it's really a universal religion. Maybe it's not the only, but it's a universal religion. It says everybody, is a child of God, and it's evangelical, and it wants other people to become Christian. That's different from other religions where I'm like, this is my God, I've got my own God here, and we're the best, and you suck. And
they make it very difficult to join.
Yeah. And it's not to say that Christians, obviously there was, fighting the Muslims, and there's some interesting revisionism there, but it's a beautiful religion.
There's terrible things that have been
religion.
done under the guise of Christianity, but if you listen to the teachings of Jesus Christ, they're not following his teachings. So it's like, it's just human behavior that they have tagged on to Christianity. So when people say Christianity is responsible for horrible atrocities, I say no. I say humans are. Because if it was actually Christianity, you would be following the teachings of Christ, and there would be none of those things.
I mean, anti-Semitism is not Christian.
Right.
So
right.
True Christianity is not that. So I think it's lovely, and I hope there's a revival of some of it. I'm not sure there is.
I think there is more now than before. There's a lot of young people that are getting into Christianity.
I think it's good to. I think it's also. I mean, it's interesting with we were talking about the UFO thing. It's an awareness that there's a higher power. So one can sort of say, look, the UFO thing, it's not the same as Christianity or whatever. But this awareness that like we're not. Like there's something else going on. There's something more. There's something higher than us, and that we should be humble in the face of this just gigantic mystery. I think that puts us in a better mentality.
It certainly does. And if anything, if he's not the Son of God, if this was an actual historical figure, what an insanely wise human being who didn't have these thoughts that are inherent to all of us of vengeance and lust and greed. He has none of these.
So radical. Also, you've heard it said before that you should, love your friends and hate your enemies. I say to you, you should love your enemies. I mean, that's just, it's like the hardest. I'm not there. I think very few people are there, but it's certainly the right aspiration, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the right aspiration. And Tucker thinks that this whole UFO thing is somehow connected to the spiritual realm. I'm in the middle of the audiobook of the Book of Enoch. And it's one of the wildest things I've ever listened to in my life.
It's weird.
Oh my God, it's so weird. When you realize that a lot of the people in the Book of Enoch are also in the Bible, and that it's one of the craziest stories. It's one of the craziest origin stories ever, that angels came down and bred with humans and made giants.
Right.
The giants destroyed the earth. Like, what is this story?
It's mostly in the Hebrew Bible. It's the story of what led to the flood. Yeah, the sons of Elohim.
How do you interpret the Watchers? What do you think that could be?
I think, they're not mentioned in the Hebrew Bible. They are mentioned in the Book of Enoch. That's a crazy book, isn't it?
It's crazy.
Yeah, I started reading it, and I said to my wife, I can't handle this. It's too much.
It's because if that was left in the Bible, if they decided that was like a part of the canon, that would change everything.
Well, in what way?
It's the craziest story ever. That these things came down and bred with humans and created giants, and the giants destroyed and consumed everything.
Yeah, those giants.
And consumed each other.
Bloodshed.
What kind of kooky story is this? Like, what is this?
Well, it's the reason for the flood,
right.
And all that. Yeah. Things just got so bad, God said, I changed my mind. And he brings the flood.
When you hear about these biblical depictions of fantastic events, how many of them are you attributing to a psychedelic experience? Are you open to that, or do you just not worry?
Well, they're clearly a psychedelic experience. The Book of Enoch is just fully psychedelic. I mean, At least a lot of it is. Yeah. It's a psychedelic version of the Bible in some ways. Well, it is really psychedelic. I think it's from the release of endogenous DMT. It comes about, or from drinking and having an ayahuasca-like experience.
That's what you think the origin of the Book of Enoch is?
Well, it's a psychedelic experience. It might be a prophetic state that's brought about. It's a visionary state, clearly. Might have been a huge fever dream. I mean, he was really out there.
These things are happening in an alternative dimension.
Right. Yeah, I think they're happening in an alternative dimension. Like when you smoke DMT, you return to the same place each time. So there seems to be some reality, some DMT world that people enter into. In that same manner, the world of the Hebrew Bible early on, Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel, Noah, the Tower of Babel, all that took place. at some different level of reality, which gradually made its way into ours. And once it made its way into ours, there's the archaeological evidence, the first temple, second temple, and so on. So there is a transition between, our world and that world kind of merged. But in the beginning, it was an alternative dimension. It's the same God, I think, but different dimensions.
So, is this your own personal conclusion?
Yeah. Well, when I was on the show last time, you're asking if I believe those things took place, and my answer then was I take it as if it were true,
right?
And then I started to think, how I would do that, like in what world would that be true? It'd be a different world.
Right. I've always believed that they were trying to record something. I just didn't always trust that human beings were completely honest with their recollection of events, so that there's something that they were trying to write down. But was it really coming from God? Are these accurate events? What exactly happened with Noah and the ark?
Mm-hmm.
What really happened?
Well, 3 stories. Three levels. Mm-hmm. 2 of each.
Yeah, but how's he feeding them? Animals eat other animals. The whole thing's nuts. You would need a lot more rabbits. You need so many animals to keep just the lions alive.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. How's he getting them all from all over the world into his stupid boat?
Yeah.
There's so many things that are wrong. What do you think was going on with that story? What is the origin of the story of Noah and his ark and his family and all the animals on the boat?
Yeah. Well, I think it was taking place in that alternate universe. It may have taken place on the planet. I don't know. I'm, looking at, why we don't have any clear archaeological history story. About what happened during the time of Noah, if there was a time of Noah. It's useful because Noah came from Adam and Eve. And he and Noah and his family were the only survivors of the flood. The first thing Noah did, got drunk after the flood.
The first thing?
The first thing he did, he planted a vineyard, grapevine, drank, got drunk. He exposed himself in the tent. One of his grandkids reported it and made a laughingstock of him.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no. Poor Noah. He got canceled? Noah got canceled?
Yeah. Took off his clothes.
Really?
Drunk.
Wasn't he 600 years old, too?
He has first child at 600, I think.
That seems real.
Well, he may have lived 6. A lot of people wonder, why did people live, in the Bible anyway?
Right.
How did people live 900 years? Well, they did.
Right. But that's also why people question what the origin of the story is. That's why. Can you hear things like that? You're like, wait a minute, how old was he? 600 years old? Come on, man.
His first child.
He's just a regular dude.
Yeah.
His first kid when he was 600.
The last one he was 830 or so.
Oh, that seems logical.
Yeah.
But maybe.
Why are you laughing?
Maybe.
Really, it could
Listen,
be true. Why not?
If people lived normally to be 600, would that be any weirder than living to be 100? No. What if something happened? What if something happened and our lifespan just went? Brrr.
Yeah. Well, the final species of man lives 35,000 years.
Jeez Louise. That's a long time to be in a bad relationship. Imagine 35,000 years of getting yelled at.
Well, they... that would be bad. But
I'm saying 35,000 years would be awesome if you have great friends and your life is together. But can you imagine 35,000 years of fuck this place? That would get tired.
Well, the point that those people tried to attain when they lived 35,000 years was this group telepathy around the whole planet.
Neuralink.
Right.
Yeah.
That was their goal. How do you perceive that force? Is it just energy, or do you anthropomorphize it into like a being that you can recognize and think about?
Right. But there's kind of no denying, at least from a recognizable, if you had to like look, how do you quantify it? How do you measure it? There's no denying that evil takes place, like you could come up with any number of massacres throughout history, and you say that's an evil act.
There's no question.
Right. So evil is a thing that's real.
If there's good, there's evil.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there have been many, many things that people have done. You're like, wow, good exists in the world. There is still good. So we know both those things are real things. We just don't know what's the root of them all. And are there really angels and demons, or are those the scapegoats for this bizarre dance of good and evil that just exists in the world?
Mm-hmm. Well, if it weren't for Adam and Eve eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, there wouldn't be any perception of good and evil. It'd just be true or false. Which is the reason that Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, because in the beginning it was they were living in a world of either truth or falsehood.
You're right.
And after eating the fruit of the difference between good and evil, they became opinionated. Oh, that's good, I like it. That's bad, I don't like it. But the issue of true or false got became muddled.
Yeah.
And they no longer were fit inhabitants of the Garden of Eden, of paradise.
What's your take on Lilith?
Yeah, Lilith. Well, there's no mention of her in the Bible per se, but there's a lot of mention of her in the rabbinic literature that sprung up after the Bible. Yeah. The story is that I think after Cain killed Abel, that Adam. No. Was it that after that? I think it was after Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden. That they stopped having sex. So Adam, then was just sleeping, with Lilith, and they spawned innumerable demons as a result of their relationship. Yeah, and after a while, Adam and Eve, reconciled, and they got the things together again. Yeah. But Lilith, plays a role in the understanding of evil in the world, like it's the result of the spawn of Lilith.
What do you think Lilith was originally? If it was a thing?
Yeah. I don't know. Well, that's called, midrash. It's the explication of the Bible, by the rabbis. So it's what's called extra biblical. Yeah, and I've only looked into extra biblical stuff to a certain extent.
What's the source of that stuff?
The imagination, and I think the surrounding environment, societies, culture, influenced by the Greeks, the Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Hittites. There's a lot of accumulation of other cultures onto interpreting the stories that occur in the text. A lot of fanciful things and entertaining things, like, for example, Lilith is the source of the demonic entities out there.
Yeah, I found out about Lilith like 6 months ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'd never even heard about it. Do you remember when we found out about Lilith? Somebody brought it up on a show, right?
Yeah, who brought it up, I'm wondering.
I don't remember, but I was like, what? Who's Lilith?
Yeah, was it Jordan Peterson?
It could have been.
Yeah, but
very
because
possibly.
He's a keen student of the Bible.
Very possibly it was him. I do not remember, though. But I remember thinking, like, wow. Like, and then the original story. Like, so when you're talking about the biblical translations of the Adam and Eve story that we're all accustomed to, it's all a watered down sort of, or a strange translated version of the ancient Hebrew. But you've read the actual ancient Hebrew version of it. Like, what did you get out of it? Like, what did you...
Well, most of the translations of the Hebrew Bible are quite good. Like, the King James Version, it's very accurate. Yeah, it's a bit, stilted.
Is anything missing in the translation from when you read it in ancient Hebrew, or do you think it's pretty clear?
It's fairly one-to-one correspondence between the Hebrew words and the English translation. Certain things are interpreted through a Christian lens because the Christians wrote the King James Bible translation.
Right.
Yeah. But the words and the grammar and the narratives, they're pretty much accurate. Yeah, they spent a lot of time working on painstaking translations. So there was a responsibility to do it accurately.
Imagine that story, like trying to pass that one down for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So there was only two people, and then there was an apple.
Right.
And a snake talked Eve into eating that apple, and everything got fucked.
Yeah. It's a very strange story, isn't it?
Very strange story. What do you think it really was all about?
I think there were two people named Adam and Eve.
For real?
As if they were real.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you imagine that there was an Adam and Eve and you visualize the garden they were in and the snake and their interactions, there you have it.
So you think the biblical interpretation is a literal recalling of actual events that took place?
No. I don't think that. Well, it's like if you smoke DMT and you enter into this world, it's true, it's overwhelmingly convincing, it's got its own laws, its own system. Things are regular. Like certain things happen, certain interactions take place. Yeah, and you're there. You're convinced it's real, and you interact with it to the best of your ability. So I think that's the case with the narratives in the text. It's not. It isn't a matter of interpreting what they mean, as much as understanding what happened.
Boy, that's obscure. So it's not interpreting what they mean, but understanding what happened.
Yeah, what did the snake say to Eve?
So a snake really talked to Eve, though.
It was as if a snake talked to Eve.
As if.
Yeah.
So perhaps a psychedelic experience, perhaps an altered state of consciousness.
No, I think it was a case of a woman standing near a tree and a snake coming up to her and saying certain things, and they have a conversation.
For real.
As if it were real. Well, the stories have been told so many times.
Right, that's the problem.
And, they seem... Well, if you...
Seems like they're blaming everything on Eve, too, which is a little suspect. I like to hear her side of it.
Well, the one who got punished without even having a chance to explain himself was the snake. So God asks Adam what happened, and he asks Eve what happened, and he just lays it on the snake.
Right.
Yeah.
And the snake's like, I didn't tell her anything. I can't even talk. This lady wanted to eat that apple. She blamed me.
Well, back then, snakes could talk. Or in that world, snakes talk.
How so?
Well, they were the wisest of all the animals in the garden. So, they could speak.
Right, but you speak of these things as if, like we're talking about when you go to the zoo, the monkeys swing from the vines, it's normal. Snakes talk.
Well, it's a bit of a paradox. Like if you...
Let me ask you this.
So if you treat those stories as if they were real, you're opening yourself up to this universe of Adam and Eve were in the garden. Then they had Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel. Then Cain had children, and his children begot the 70 nations. And then there was a flood because mankind was bad. Noah and his family survived. They all spoke one language afterwards. There was on a tower. There was Nimrod. There was Abraham. There was Isaac and Jacob. So it's this world which seems to be quite coherent, quite consistent. It all ties together. It's quite consistent from book to book, from narrative to narrative. It is a different way of looking at the Bible. It isn't dogma like you have to do this or you have to do that, or it isn't like a Jungian archetype or a psychodynamic wish fulfillment. It's this world that that is articulated, spelled out in a very ancient, very influential text.
So is it also possible that something completely different took place, but that over time and over a oral tradition of who knows how many hundreds of years before they actually wrote it down, and then writing it down, that you're getting a version of the actual event that's very different than what really took place, but you think about it like the version in the scripture. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it in the version of the scripture, are you thinking about it like as if this was an event as recorded, or are you thinking this is a representation of an archetype or some sort of moment in human history that they're trying to recollect and pass down?
Well, if you consider, yeah, kind of, yeah. Well, if you consider, the text to be prophetically received, prophecy is communication between the divine and man, and the text was prophetically received. In fact, Philo of Alexandria, one of Terence McKenna's heroes, used to say, the most accurate historians were the prophets. Because they heard it, directly, from the initiator of the event, the witness of the event, the one who, could understand the event in the huge context. So it's a prophetically received, text, which means it contains information received from a spiritual sort of level, which you would think is a universal field of sorts. Mm.
How much have you ever paid attention, if at all, to any of that ancient Sumerian stuff, like the Anunnaki and?
Some. Yeah, I watched this really great documentary a few years back. Yeah, but I wouldn't consider myself as knowing much about it.
Right. That, to me, is one of the weirder origin stories.
Yeah. So what is that origin story? On my recall, it's quite fascinating, but not the details.
Well, there's multiple versions of it. First of all, the story of this, the fantastic story, is told by Zecharia Sitchin. So Zecharia Sitchin, who wrote The 12th Planet, and he wrote several other books. He was a biblical scholar and a linguist, and he spent a lot of time studying the ancient Sumerian text, the cuneiform. And what he believes is that it tells a story of an ancient relationship between a race of beings on a far distant planet that's in an elliptical orbit, and it comes near Earth every 3,600 years, and that they had engineered human beings out of lower primates. They had accelerated our evolution, and that all of what we know about the cosmos, all of what we know about, they have these detailed, I don't see the ancient tablets that have a detailed map of the solar system from 6,000 years ago.
Right, okay.
They have the sun in the center and all the moon, and they have these really enormous beings. And these enormous beings were supposed to be these things called the Anunnaki.
Okay.
And the literal translation is those from heaven to earth came.
Uh-huh.
It's one of the weirder,
Anunnaki.
If you love a great science fiction version of the origin story of humans, it's the most fun one.
Yeah, it brings to mind the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim, which occur in the story of the flood and Noah.
Mm-hmm. The Nephilim, too.
Yeah, the Nephilim, the Rephaim, they were huge. They were giants.
Yes.
Yeah. Men of renown. Yeah, and they intermarried, or they had sex with the daughters of man, and from them came a race. So that story is interpreted or perceived through the lens of the Hebrew Bible too.
Really?
Yeah. Well, there are, that is a story in the text. Before the flood, is the B'nai Elohim. Come down to earth. They have intercourse with, the daughters of man, and out of those relationships, comes this, race of giants.
That's the most fun one.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Well, they all got swept away in the flood. So that's an interesting, turn of events.
Well, if you interpret the flood as the Younger Dryas impact theory, which created the flood, which lines up.
Right, that does line up.
Yeah, it lines up time-wise, lines up with how it would go down. Yeah, just no evidence of giants. That's the only thing we're missing. If they found some giants.
Well, in the meantime, you can assume that the giants were real, and understand their origin, what they were like, what they did, why they did it, what the results were.